All right, kids, we're on. Hi, everybody. I am really pleased to be coming to you remotely from Dinsmore School. This is not Plan A. This is not even Plan B. This is Plan C for a Remembrance Day presentation. We're certainly learning to roll with the punches. So we've had to forego the cenotaph ceremony portion of our day, but we are pleased to present you our educational portion of the program and the Legion Literary and Poster Awards today. So I hope you enjoy what we've got. There will also be a file with a beautiful choir song coming your way, and Mrs. Bollock is preparing a presentation regarding a special award from the Macquarie Legion, so stay tuned for that. First of all, I'd like to introduce everybody. This is mostly for fifths of the many ways, the grade 11 class at DCS. We are missing a couple of boys today who weren't able to participate with us. So we have a substitute, so I'm going to start with her. I would like to thank Paige Thompson for joining us today. Give us a wave, Paige. Up in the other corner, I have Tristan Flath. I have Madison Fisher. I have Spencer Flath. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Ryan Keiko. Ryan is our opening MC, and Maddie is also helping him out as co-MC today. I'll let you guys start.
Welcome to our Remembrance Day ceremony. My name is Ryan Keiko.
And I'm Madison Fisher.
We are representing the grade 11 class at DCS. We acknowledge that we are broadcasting this ceremony from Treaty 6 territory, traditional home and traveling ground of the Plains Cree and homeland of the Métis people. We are dedicated to listening and learning with open hearts as we work towards reconciliation. We would like to open with a big thank you to Mr. Jeff Lawrence, who has been our longtime Remembrance Day ceremony pianist. There are no hymns to sing this year, no national anthem, nor the traditional God Save the Queen, but we would like to thank him for his dedication and service to the delivery of this ceremony over the years. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. We are pleased to have the honor of presenting this year's program and are proud to take on the challenge of keeping our Remembrance Day traditions alive. We would like to take this time to acknowledge and honor our former Legion members for their tireless work in keeping the memory of past conflicts alive and instilling in our generation an appreciation and understanding of the sacrifices made for our freedom. We believe in your message and know that we must do everything possible to ensure that World War never happens again. Thank you for all you have done for us. Special thanks to Glenn Mick and Buzz Folliott for the continued support of our Remembrance Day efforts here at DCS.
We are going to begin with our award presentations. Mrs. Bollock, representing the Macquarie Legion branch number 239, will present the Macquarie Legion Award in a separate video, but we will announce the winners of the Dinsmore Literary and Poster Awards on behalf of the Knit Club of Dinsmore. We would like to thank Mrs. Kristen Ward, Mrs. Twyla Norris, and Mrs. Melissa Bencharski for taking the time to judge the entries this year. Here are the 2020 award winners. Primary black and white posters. Third place, Adele Soul. Second place, Sophia Norris. First place, Ellie Morrison. Primary color posters. Third place, Sophia Norris. Second place, Chet Flath. And first place, Allie Morrison. Junior black and white posters. Third place, Ethan Poirier. Second place, Sydney Keeler. First place, Harley McNeely. Junior color posters. Third place, Caitlin Pichach. Second place, Ethan Poirier. First place, Harley McNeely. Junior posters. Third place, Charity Payunion. Second place, Sadie Noonion. And first place, Blake Laws. Intermediate black and white posters. Third place, Alexa Elstad. Second place, Venice Bantang. And first place, Abby Friesen. Intermediate color posters. Third place, Pia Sol. Second place, Venice Bantang. And first place, Amaya Jones. Intermediate essays. Third place, Ainsley Beatty. Second place, Alexandra Norris. And first place, Tegan Woolen. Intermediate poetry. Third place, Pia Sol. Second place, Abby Friesen. And first place, Amaya Jones. Senior black and white posters. Second place, Paige Thompson. First place, Savannah Blackwell. Senior color posters. First place, Courtney Norris. Senior essays. First place, Tristan Flath. Senior poetry. First place, Spencer Flath. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you to all the students who entered the contest and to their teacher who continue to promote the contest in their classes. All the first place winners have moved on to the zone competition.
Every year on November 11th, Canadians pause in a silent moment of remembrance for the men and women who have served and continue to serve our country during times of war, conflict, and peace. We honor those who fought for Canada in the First World War, the Second World War, and the Korean War, as well as those who have served since then. More than 1.5 million Canadians have served our country in this way, and more than 100,000 have died. They gave their lives and their futures so that we may live in peace. We must remember, if we do not, the sacrifice of those 100,000 Canadian lives will be meaningless. They died for us, for their homes and families and friends, for a collection of traditions they cherished and a future they believed in. They died for Canada. The meaning of their sacrifice rests with our collective national consciousness. Our future is their monument. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. We remember with gratitude the sacrifices made by the soldiers and their families, as we acknowledge 75 years since those events which marked the end of a deadly 6-year conflict and the end of fascist rule in Europe. We would also like to acknowledge 2 other significant anniversaries this year. 2020 marks the 75th anniversary of the end of the Holocaust in Europe, but it also marks the 75th anniversary of the dropping of the first atomic bombs that led to the annihilation of the cities and thousands of citizens of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. We mark the end of World War II with gratitude and celebration. We mark the end of the Holocaust with sadness and with reverence to the millions of lives lost. We mark the bombings in Japan with mixed emotions as we struggle with the justification of mass destruction in the interest of ending World War. Our first set of slides discuss the end of World War II.
VE Day at last. The Second World War was the bloodiest conflict in human history. It began in September 1939, and the fighting in Europe would rage until May 1945. Canada joined many other countries to form the Allied powers, which fought to restore peace and freedom to the continent. Shown here are Seaforth Highlanders of Canada soldiers in the Netherlands in May 1945. Our soldiers, sailors, and aviators played an important role in helping achieve victory. As the war neared its end, Canadian troops took part in the bitter campaign in Northwest Europe in 1944 and 1945. They saw heavy action in France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, and Germany before the enemy was finally forced to surrender in early May. The Western Allies declared the 8th of May 1945 to be Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day. After years of hardship, suffering, and sacrifice, millions around the world celebrated the end of the fighting. Peace in Europe had come at last. The Royal Canadian Mint is marking the milestone with a 7-coin commemorative set designed to strike a balance between remembrance and celebration. VJ Day, and freedom. Some 10,000 Canadians served in Asia during the Second World War. This included almost 2,000 soldiers from Manitoba's Winnipeg Grenadiers and Quebec's Royal Rifles of Canada, who were sent across the Pacific Ocean in the fall of 1941 to help defend the British colony of Hong Kong. The Japanese invaded Hong Kong on the 8th of December 1941. Badly outnumbered, the defenders fought bravely before being forced to surrender on Christmas Day. Approximately 290 Canadians were killed and almost 500 wounded. The survivors' ordeal was just beginning. Over the next 4 years, 267 more would die as a result of malnutrition, beatings by prison guards, and forced labor. Thousands of Royal Canadian Air Force members also served in Asia during the conflict. Most of them would take part in the Burma campaign, working as radar operators, members of bomber, transport, reconnaissance, and fire squadrons. George MacDonald of Ontario was a young company sergeant major who set up the desperate fighting in Hong Kong. We immediately were engaged, and the Canadians fought extremely well in a hopeless situation. There wasn't anybody there that did not know that we were in a terrible spot. Japan surrendered on the 15th of August 1945 after the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Victory over Japan, VJ Day, marked the end of almost 6 years of fighting in the Second World War. The Canadian prisoners of war were finally liberated and could return home.
The Battle of the Atlantic was the longest campaign of the Second World War. This bitter struggle at sea lasted from the first day of conflict in September 1939 to the end of the fighting in Europe in May 1945. It was a showdown between the Allies, who needed transport supplies and troops from North America to Europe, and the Germans, who wanted to cut that vital line.
It was a hard-fought struggle in which the German U-boats, which were submarines, came dangerously close to victory as they torpedoed hundreds of Allied transport ships in the opening years of the war. With courage and the adoption of new technology and tactics, however, the tide turned and the Allies would eventually triumph in the war at sea.
Members of the Royal Canadian Navy, the Canadian Merchant Navy, and the Canadian Air Force played leading roles in this battle. Indeed, more than 25,000 Allied merchant ships safely made it to their destination under Canadian escort, delivering some of 165 million tons of supplies to Europe.
The cost of helping the convoys get through was high. Some 2,000 of our sailors died during the conflict, 750 Canadian airmen lost their lives over the Atlantic, and more than 1,600 of our merchant seamen were killed. But without victory in the Battle of the Atlantic, the Allies could not have triumphed in the Second World War. Our second set of slides discuss the end of the Holocaust.
During World War II, approximately 5.7 million Jews were murdered by Nazi Germany, and the dead were not victims of war. They were killed because they were Jewish. The Holocaust developed in stages, but its broad outlines were clear from the start. Adolf Hitler began to rise in power in Germany in September 1919 when he joined the political party known as DAP, Germany's Worker Party. The name was changed in 1920 to NSDAP, National Socialist Germans Worker Party, commonly known as the Nazi Party. Initially, Nazis' political strategy was to focus on different issues, but in 1930s, their main party focus shifted to anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is the belief or behavior hostile towards Jews because they are Jewish. It may take forms of religious teaching that proclaim that the authority of Jews, for instance, or political efforts to isolate, oppress, or otherwise injure them. One of the things Hitler believed was that everything bad happened was because of the Jewish. It's not. I apologize for not sharing. Oh, what is it doing? It's the wrong document.
Maddie, just keep reading your information and take the slideshow down.
Okay, sorry. I don't know why the one I have isn't showing up. I'll just leave.
Okay. I think. Okay. Yeah, it's still not the right one. Hey.
It just disappeared. Like it's opened on my window, but it's not here. Sorry about that.
Okay. No, that's okay. Just finish up your presentation.
Okay, sorry. The final solution was the shortened version of what the Nazis called the final solution to the Jewish question. It was a term for the Nazi plan to exterminate and the genocide of Jewish people during World War II, but it was in phases. The persecution of Jews became almost as soon as Hitler came to power. The Nazis established many anti-Jewish laws. They were introduced slowly so that the civilized population would not realize the extent of the Nazis' anti-Semitism. In 1933, they started with burning public books by Jewish and anti-Nazi authors, random attacks on Jews and Jewish properties, and the police and court could no longer protect people who were Jewish. In 1934, Jewish students were excluded from exams in medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, and law. The Jews excluded from military service also, and there was also a law where Jewish and German-blooded people were not allowed to marry. In 1935 and 1936, Jews were no longer allowed to vote, and they all lost their German citizenships. Benefit and payment to Jewish families stopped. Jews were banned from parks, restaurants, and swimming pools, and they were forbidden to use the German greeting. Passports for Jewish travel were restricted, and many students were removed from German schools and universities. In 1938, special identity cards were issued to Jews. They were not allowed in movie theaters, concerts, or any fun things outside of their homes. Jewish were forced to add the names Sarah and Israel to their own. On November 9th, a night of terrible violence in Germany, many Jews were murdered, their homes and shops destroyed and burnt down. Jewish children were all expelled from German schools, and Jewish passports had a big letter J stamped onto them. In 1939 and 1940, they were all evicted from their homes and put into ghettos. All their radios and telephones were confiscated. Jewish curfews were established, and they could no longer receive ration cards for clothing. In 1941, Jewish people were forced to wear a yellow Star of David with Jew written on them. They were forbidden to use telephone. They were not allowed to keep pets, and they had to hand over all their fur coats and woolen items. They were not allowed to receive egg and milks anymore, and all schools were officially closed for anyone of Jewish descent. Sorry, anyone who practiced. This was just the beginning of the horrible events to come. Although they took all these rights away, no one saw it coming.
Nazi concentration camps, Auschwitz-Birkenau and Treblinka. Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. Built in Poland, it was actually a vast network of 48 sites. Also called Auschwitz 1, 2, and 3 for the main facilities, they had 45 other satellite camps as well. Auschwitz 1 originally held Polish political prisoners who were first sent there in May 1940. It was at Auschwitz 2, called Birkenau, where the exterminations began in 1942. Of those killed, some 90% were Jewish, the rest were Poles, Soviets, Romani, Sinti, Jehovah's Witnesses, gays, and those of mixed German blood. Though gassing was a major cause of death, so was overwork, malnutrition, poor conditions, inhumane treatment, and infectious diseases. More than 1.1 million people died here. Treblinka was built to the northeast of Warsaw and was set up on July 23, 1942. Although the first concentration camps were not meant to kill anyone, Treblinka was specifically designed for death. By August 1941, over 70,000 handicapped German men, women, and children had been exterminated through Action T4, an operation to eliminate the weak. The knowledge gained from that was used at Treblinka. Jews and Gypsies were worked at Treblinka 1, and when they died, were disposed of at Treblinka 2. Some 700,000 to 900,000 Jews and about 2,000 Gypsies were killed here, the second highest casualty rate after Auschwitz-Birkenau.
Holocaust survivor stories. The survivors of the Holocaust who emerged from a nightmare and managed to put together the pieces of a new life have grown to old age in the 21st century. Many, as they leave this life, take one last chance to tell their stories in their obituaries. Goldie Finkelstein. When Goldie was 13, she and her older sister were grabbed off the street by the Nazis to be sent to a forced labor camp. Her father was able to bribe the authorities to release his daughters, but when they got to the gate to be freed, a senior Nazi SS officer said to her father, "Only one may go, you must choose." With her father unable to choose, Goldie volunteered to stay and for her sister to go home. Goldie was sent alone to a slave labor camp called Graben, where she and other young women were forced to manufacture textiles for the Nazi military. Goldie survived a death march in the winter of 1945 from Graben to the concentration camp Bergen-Belsen, where she was liberated. Sadly, her entire family had been deported to Auschwitz in August 1943, where they were gassed and burned within hours of arrival. Goldie was left alone, at 15 years old, the sole survivor of her family. Edgar Talmas. At the age of 9, with the Warsaw Ghetto under Nazi control, Edgar's mother was forced to take him to a Silesian orphanage. He lived there as a hidden child, separated from his parents for 3 years. When Edgar was 12, the Nazis discovered that the orphanage clergy was working with the resistance, and while the Nazis were rounding up the children and arresting the priests, he escaped, hiding in a church until he was able to contact his parents and reunite with them. Sylvia Indig. At the age of 16, she was sent along with her parents and younger brother David to the Warsaw Ghetto for extermination with the rest of her town's 6,000-member Jewish population. There she became reacquainted with her future husband, Morris. At the ghetto train station, while awaiting transport to certain death, Sylvia recognized a German officer. Morris quickly befriended the officer, and together they avoided the boxcar transport, but were unable to release her family from the train to Treblinka, and she never saw or heard from any of them again. Sylvia and Morris then fled south to the farm of a Polish Catholic family who hid them in the loft of their barn and sustained them in hiding with food and shelter for over 26 months until the liberation of Poland by the Russian army. Soldier experience during liberation of Nazi camps. Liberators confronted unspeakable conditions in the Nazi camps where piles of corpses lay unburied. Only after the liberation of these camps was the full scope of Nazi horrors exposed to the world. The small percentage of inmates who survived resembled skeletons because of the demands of forced labor and the lack of food, as well as months and years of maltreatment. Many were so weak that they could hardly move. Epidemics remained an ever-present danger, and many of the camps had to be burned down to prevent the spread of disease. Survivors of the camps faced a long and difficult road to recovery. Soviet soldiers found over 6,000 thin and weak prisoners alive when they entered Auschwitz, the largest killing center and concentration camp. There was an immense amount of evidence of mass murder in Auschwitz. The retreating Germans had destroyed most of the warehouses in the camp, but in the remaining ones, the Soviets found personal belongings of the victims. They discovered, for example, hundreds of thousands of men's suits, more than 800,000 women's outfits, and more than 14,000 pounds of human hair. As Allied and Soviet troops moved across Europe against Nazi Germany, they encountered concentration camps, mass graves, and other sites of Nazi crimes. This year, 2020, marks the 75th anniversary of the Soviet, American, and British liberation of concentration camps and the end of Nazi tyranny in Europe. This is a photo of one of the Nazi concentration camps, Bergen-Belsen, being burned after liberated on April 15, 1945.
Holocaust rescuers. Oskar Schindler was a German industrialist and a member of the Nazi Party who was credited with saving the lives of over 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust by employing them in his enamelware and ammunition factories. He joined the military intelligence service of Nazi Germany in 1936, and he joined the Nazi Party in 1939, prior to the German occupation of Czechoslovakia in 1938. He collected information on railways and troop movements for the German government and was arrested for espionage by the Czechoslovak government, but was released under the terms of the Munich Agreement in 1938. Schindler continued to collect information from the Nazis working in Poland in 1939 before the invasion of Poland at the start of World War II. In 1939, Schindler acquired an enamelware factory in Krakow, Poland, and it had 1,750 workers, and 1,000 of the workers were Jews. Schindler's military connections helped him protect his Jewish workers from deportation and death in Nazi concentration camps. Raoul Wallenberg was a Swedish architect, businessman, diplomat, and humanitarian. He saved tens of thousands of Jews in German-occupied Hungary during the Holocaust from German Nazis and Hungarian fascists during the later stages of World War II. While serving as Sweden's special envoy in Budapest between July and December of 1944, Wallenberg issued protective passports, and he sheltered Jews in buildings designated as Swedish territory on January 17, 1945, during the siege of Budapest by the Red Army. Wallenberg was detained by Smersh on suspicion of espionage, and then he disappeared. He was later reported to have died on July 17, 1947, while in prison at the headquarters of the KGB secret police in Moscow. While the motives between Wallenberg's arrest and imprisonment by the Soviet government, along with questions surrounding the circumstances of his death and his ties to the U.S. intelligence, remain mysterious and are the subject of continued speculation.
We hope you leave this presentation with a better understanding of the significant events at the end of World War II. We must always remember the sacrifices that were made to ensure our freedom. We must never forget. We hope you leave with more understanding of the horrors of the Holocaust, along with the more faith in the human spirit to overcome great traumas and tragedy.
The DCS Grade 11 class would like to thank the following people for their work in getting our Remembrance Day ceremony organized this year. The Dinsmore Cadets for sponsoring the awards, along with contest judges, Mrs. Ward, Mrs. Norris, and Mrs. Bencharski. Thank you to the McCrory Legion members for their continuing support. Thanks to Mrs. Bullock for helping us with the technical side of this program and for getting these recordings to all of you. Special thanks to Paige Thompson for volunteering to fill in with the class program portion of this event. And, of course, thanks to all of you for joining us from home.
And before we go, I just would like to thank all of you for all of your hard work, but most of all for your flexibility. We went from a live program with community members and an officiant representing the church and a full gym of people to a reduced program with just a few grades, but still live, to a recorded live stream, to now we're just posting it on YouTube. And through all of this, you guys have been super flexible and have just rolled with it, and I really appreciate that. I urge you all to tune in to a Remembrance Day program and pause for a couple of minutes to honor those who went before us in the name of peace. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Each year, the Royal Canadian Legion sponsors a poster and literary contest that promotes remembrance in schools for students in kindergarten through grade 12. Students compete at the zone level, with winners advancing to the district level. From the district level, winning entries move on to the provincial level. Finalists are then forwarded to the Legion National Foundation in Ottawa to be judged at the national level. 3 students from Dinsmore Composite School were winners at the provincial level in the 2019 contest. Harley McNeely placed second in the junior poster color category. Abigail Friesen won 3rd place in the intermediate poster black and white category. Madison Dempsey earned 2nd place in the senior essay category. On behalf of the McCrory Legion Branch 239, it is my honor to present Dinsmore Composite School with this banner to recognize the achievement of these 3 students. Thank you to all students who participate in this annual contest and for your acts of remembrance. Congratulations, Harley, Abby, and Maddie, for your provincial achievement. Lest we forget.